Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. What you have to know before buying or building an external SSD drive for your computer. Doesn't matter if it's Mac or PC, you gotta know. So I do a lot of experimenting, spend some money, gotta do experimenting, right? So we need to know exactly what we have in our computer for ports, okay? In this case, we're going to talk about Type-C/Thunderbolt ports. Now, not many Windows computers out there even have Thunderbolt in them, okay? Not without spending a lot of extra money on a computer just to get Thunderbolt. However, at least on a Mac, you can spend $1,300 on an M1 MacBook Air and you've got two Thunderbolt ports that also work as Type-C ports, DisplayPort, etc. Wow, love it, okay? You're not going to get away with it that cheap on a Windows computer, let me tell you. Not for having all that, okay? But a lot of people watch videos, right? Like we all do, billions of us. And we look at all these new toys that are coming out for drives, etc. And people are, oh, look at what I got going here and this. But you don't necessarily have their computer, okay? This is a problem. And you tend to take their word at a lot of stuff, agreeably so, and you think, okay, I'm going to buy that. That's really super fast. I'm going to buy that. I've got a Type-C connection on here. So you automatically assume you have the correct hardware when you probably likely don't. Unless you're a Mac user, you likely don't have the correct hardware. That's where we get into some interesting little conundrums. Now, pretty much anybody who's got a Type-C port on their laptop or even their desktop PC, Windows computer, is going to be able to plug in any 3.1 drive. Even a 3.2 drive, no problem. 3.2 Gen 2 by 2, no problem. But the problem becomes this. Now, this is 3.2 and below, but it's only going to get you 1,000 megabytes per second read-write on the top side. Very top side, okay? And this is a factory-built drive, and I don't recommend them because when they break down, they're garbage. You cannot replace the drive inside. And this cost me $160 at Best Buy. That was like stupid. But I do stupid things at times because I kind of need to. And it helps you find folk out at the same time, and it's still a useful device. Just, it was a waste of money. So then we got the 3.2 case from Sabrent. Now, this is a do-it-yourself thing. A 2-year-old can build the drive into this. So you buy the case for about 40 bucks Canadian, okay? You open it up, it's just a little push button, and you got a little flick switch here, and you just, kind of pop it back like this, and voila, your drive comes out. You put your drive in, go in, push down and hold, wiggle the little sucker a little bit, and turn the clamp, and it's locked in place, and you're ready. Now, this does have a silicone heat thing, but it's completely useless on this case because it's never going to touch any of your drive components that it needs to. So you're going to have to layer at least a couple layers. I think I got, two layers, 3 layers? I think I got about 3 layers of silicone in here just to get everything to touch so that it gives a bit of pressure to squeeze down and it locks. I'm good to go, and it's actually going to work properly to help dissipate more heat better. Now, this will work on any Mac or any PC that has a Type-C port, okay, or even a non-Thunderbolt port, okay. As long as it's got Type-C connection, this drive is going to work in your PCs that have this. But you also have the adapters, and I can't remember if this case actually came with the adapter or not. It's been a while. But you will need an adapter to go to Type A, whether it comes with it or not. You're going to need to use it for Type A use. So can I even go down to USB 3.0 and 2.0 even to hook in? It's just the drive gets really slow, okay? At 3.1, 3.2 speeds, you're going to be seeing up to 1,000 megabytes per second. But that also depends on the drive you put in. This is an Express 3 drive by Western Digital. And even though it's a little overkill, it is rated for 3,500 read-write. It's never going to get that in this case. So you're going to want to buy basically a slower drive, something that's rated for at least 1,000 read-write, just to keep your cost down, and then go to the size that you need. However, this case does max out at 2 terabyte, okay? So you can't go beyond 2 terabyte and have it readable. Now, with this comes as a complete little kit. Now, this is a Oracle USB 3.2 Gen 2 times 2 drive, which gets you 2,000 megabytes per second read and write capability. Again, depending on the drive you put inside, whether or not you're even going to see the speeds. However, your computer must have a 3.2 Gen 2 times 2 port, or you will never see 2,000 megabits per second no matter what you have in here. And right now I've got an Express 4 at 7,000 megabytes per second, and it ain't gonna get it. It's not even gonna get me 2,000 because neither one of my computers have a 3.2 Gen 2 by 2. Now I do have a 3.2 Gen 2 port on my Windows computer, but it's not Gen 2 by 2. It's very specific. So I only get to see 1,000 megabytes per second out of this thing. Same as when I plug it into my Mac, into the Thunderbolt port. Even though Thunderbolt is fast, it's 40 gigabits per second, the USB 3 side on the M1 and on the M2s are both 3.1 Gen 2, which means they're only good for 10 gigabits per second, which is going to be 1,000 megabytes per second. That's it, no matter what you do. And it does have a Type A plug built in where you can just unplug. It hangs out to the side, which I think is absolutely stupid because it makes it a real pain to plug into certain areas. But it's there nonetheless. You can always cut the thing off and just keep it handy, I guess. It's probably what I'm going to end up doing. But this definitely is going to be the slower bus line no matter what. Okay, even though it's, version 3, even on the Type A, it's still going to be slower than going Type C. It's going to be about half the speed or less. Okay. Then, of course, you have these guys, which go into their own type of external case, which gets you usually no more than about 500 on the top side on the read, and usually about 400 on the right side. That's average, okay, no matter how big you go. But these things here, they use a different type of a case, which all the generic cases I found that these things fit in so far, none of them have an integrated cable. It's a separate cable. It's a very flaky connector. So put it down. Don't budge it because it might lose its connection point. I've talked, I think, a little bit about that kind of connector on a previous video a while back. They're not the best, but they do work, okay? Type C is always better. But even the Type C cases, you can get some pretty cheap cases below this. This is 40 Canadian. You start getting cheaper than this too much, and you start to get very piss poor quality cases that are very frustrating. They tend to be just horrible cases, and I've had a few of them, and they're all meant the garbage can, okay? Because even one of them actually just outright failed on me completely. The controller board blew, so it kind of paid to spend the $40 to get this, and it's super heavy duty too. Portability and size is another thing too to look at. When you take the cable off like this, you pack it away. This is very small, in comparison to, this one or this one, which they're narrower, but they're longer too. So it's kind of, what you want to do, right? But knowing what ports you have is your foremost concern. I don't care what video you watch, how good they say a particular drive may be or a case may be. If you do not have the supporting version of port to attain the speeds you're after, there's no point in buying. Basically, in layman's terms, if you're looking for Thunderbolt, great. Go out and buy a Thunderbolt case. Buy an Express 4 drive because you're going to need that. Okay, the Express 3s don't work so well for getting to 2,700 megabytes per second, which I've figured out already, so be aware. It took an Express 4 Kingston KC3000 to get my Intamin cases that are Thunderbolt, plugging into a Thunderbolt port on my Mac, okay, to get 2750 and change read-write consistently, okay? Now, that's a synthetic benchmark. Benchmarks are benchmarks. They tend to be different than the real-world applications. Real-world applications, this is when we really see when the drive may be starting to thermal a little bit, regardless of the cooling. It might slow down a little bit, then it cools off, and then it friggin' flies up again in speed. So, this is kind of why I'm kind of really against doing video editing on external drives, but I'm kind of, I guess, doing it in a way anyways. Most people, they're going to say, well, you know, you've got your internal storage. It's not the biggest, right? So they say, don't pay Apple's blood money. Just stick with the 256. If anything, upgrade your RAM, right? Pay the money for that because you don't have a choice. But they say you have a choice on the external side. Just buy a big external Thunderbolt drive or whatever you need, right? Well, the thing is you've got no S on an internal, then you've got your files on the external, and that is going to slow you down, okay? So in a sense, I guess I'm kind of working in that same scenario because I'm using an external Thunderbolt drive as my boot drive, but I also use it as my editing drive. So it's actually faster doing it that way than it is to have an internal drive going to an external drive. But either way, internal period is always your best bet, okay? Because then everything's there. But then you need size, right? And that's the thing where now we're looking at, do we pay Apple's blood money? Because, I mean, it's cheaper to put drives inside of PCs because they're still, majority of PCs are still very upgradable for RAM and storage on your own, way cheaper, do-it-yourself kind of thing, right? Where Macs, we're kind of locked in on Macs, and we have been for years now, where we haven't been able to upgrade RAM or drive space internally ourselves. So we have to custom order the computer the way we need it, okay? And of course, like I said, you're going to pay money for that drive space, right? Well, you pay money for RAM too, but you don't have a choice for the RAM. But the drive, I would at least go with a 0.5 terabyte. I mean, even for me, I'm not a flashy YouTube creator like a lot of people are. So for me, I could just live with my internal 0.5 terabyte. I've got it completely loaded up the same way I do my external right now. I still have 300 gigs free. Okay, I mean, my average video, even in 4K, by the time I'm done a 4K video, it might be a few gigs in size, you know, maybe 4 or 5 gigs tops. But even by the time I get that thing edited, get it exported, then compress it, I mean, it's meaningless. But it's a lot of extra writing on the drive, which is where the problems come in, where SSDs are only good for a certain amount of writes, which gives you the advantage of doing a lot of video editing on these because you're constantly writing to them and reading from them. So if they burn out, and they will eventually, then you can just replace the internal drive in the case for build it your owns. With pre-builts, you throw it in the garbage can when you're done with it because that's it, end of story. And these things tend to be a little bit more costly, even in the higher terabyte size, than building your own. Building your own is far cheaper, far better, and generally far faster too. But again, you have to know what ports you have. And Thunderbolt 4 does not necessarily mean you're going to have Gen 2 3.22 2x2 compatibility, because we see it right on Apple's website. We only have 3.1 Gen 2 as the 3.1 side of the access points, but we do have Thunderbolt. So it's always better to go Thunderbolt than to even think about the USB 3 system when it comes to a Mac, right? And all Macs come with Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4, depending on the Mac that you buy, okay? And depending if it's an M1, M2, etc., okay? Now, I'm kind of hoping that the M3s will actually have not only Thunderbolt 5 capability, but also have that USB 3.2 Gen 2x2, because then it would actually make this worth the money that I spent on the case. But I'm not worried about it. It was an investment, and it was an experiment to see if we could actually achieve some speed that it's rated for. But we found out that no, we absolutely must have, no choice, must have a 3.2 Gen 2x2 port. Even my Windows computer, my laptop I spent $2,000 on, its USB-C port that's on there is only a 3.2. So it doesn't qualify as a 2x2 Gen 2 port. And it's like, ugh! You know, so even that, I only get 1,000 megabytes per second out of this. So you learn these things, right? So it's going to cost you a lot of money to get a computer that has the higher tier level stuff to cover all bases. You know what I mean? Even Thunderbolt into a laptop is a rare thing. It doesn't happen very often. In fact, it's very rare. And only certain PCs are going to have that equipped already. You may have the option to have it put in, but it's going to cost you. Keep that in mind. Anyhow, I think that pretty much covers this video and what you need to know before you get into this SSD stuff and taking recommendations of anybody, including myself, know what hardware you have before you get into this external SSD stuff. But at least with 1,000 megabytes per second, you should be fine for doing the majority of your video editing. But faster is always better. Trust me, it makes a huge difference. But you got to have the horsepower to do it. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next video. See ya.